Hi, I'm Lana with Red Ice. I want to talk about the taboo subject of voluntary racial segregation and the importance of freedom of association from a realistic perspective in America, a country transformed into a multicultural mess. The government made it happen, and they won't make it unhappen. There is no end to laws that might be enacted to prevent European Americans from existing as a cohesive group. One of the last things shady Obama did was launch a scheme to make safe, nice, white neighborhoods less white and less safe. His people literally compiled the list of so-called racist zip codes, areas where whites live together in peace without crime-ridden ghettos. It actually happened. Although there are around 30 million whites in poverty in America, the majority of those in Section 8 subsidized federal housing are black. And wherever Section 8 housing exists, so does a lot of crime. Obama's so-called Fair Housing Act claimed these poor folks just need access to safer neighborhoods, better schools, and jobs. In other words, they need access to white neighborhoods and their magical privilege that makes everything simply appear for them without any effort or hard work whatsoever. It's not the fault of blacks who are poor and may turn to crime. They have no choice. It's the fault of whites who hold them down from becoming successful entrepreneurs. Detroit, Baltimore, Chicago ghettos, and even Soweto in Africa, all because of slavery and racism, no other reason. Obama's plan aimed to reallocate funding for Section 8 housing to punish suburbs for being too white and too wealthy.
I think at a certain point, you've made enough money.
It was all about race, about revenge for slavery and segregation, about making all white people pay. The scheme involves giving vouchers to help so-called minorities afford higher rent in pricey white areas. Not rich black areas. We're not talking about poor whites being imported into rich black or Asian areas, or poor Latinos into a rich Asian area. It's always about non-whites being sent into white neighborhoods. Government real estate agents called mobility counselors help to secure or rather enforce housing in these areas, even going after landlords who refuse with discrimination lawsuits. So you as a white person work hard to live in a nice area while minorities get to live in the same area for free or next to nothing, funded by your tax dollars. Even their utilities are paid. This is insanity. It's anything but fair. The government began seeking nice, high-rent areas and building Section 8 housing right smack in the middle. This happened years ago in beautiful downtown, touristy Charleston, South Carolina. And the crime that followed was so bad that the government changed policy so that only, don't laugh, single mothers could live in the housing, and once a boy turned 18, they had to go. If you drive by this area today, you'll see nothing but black single mothers. Wherever subsidized government housing exists, so does high crime rates. In order to hide these stats, anti-whites dump them in low-crime white areas. Clinton also tried this in the 90s, and it failed. With claims that blacks commit crime or use more welfare only because they need access to better housing, jobs, communities, and schools, nothing changes except they stay on welfare longer and nice areas get wrecked. It's the sad truth. So wrecked that even Hillary Clinton, the champion of poor minorities, opposed this plan in her own neighborhood. White rich liberals are the sickest hypocrites of them all. They know all of this is true, but they're too fake and dishonest to admit it. Dallas is a good example. In 2012, the same fair housing program was forced into affluent areas. Now Dallas has one of the highest murder rates in the nation and had to call in state troopers to help police control it. For the first time, violent crime shifted to communities north of the city with massive spikes in rapes, assaults, and break-ins. This process of importing poor non-whites into white areas is called diversity mapping, or, funny, geospatial discrimination. It means chasing down the last white people and forcing them to live with a certain people while also paying for those people to live in their neighborhood. Then that neighborhood goes downhill. This is anti-discrimination. This is white privilege. See, all whites are so evil that we must pay for our sin of existing because our mere presence is oppression. This process is a good example of something that is happening on a much larger scale with the importation of mass third world immigrants into European nations. Well, Trump halted this Obama program, until 2020. How about cutting it out altogether? The left isn't quite about their plan to force areas that are too white, not too black, Asian, or Hispanic, to racially diversify against their will until they become a minority in their neighborhood, their state, and eventually their country.
It's not going to stop, nor should we want it to stop.
They call this equality and the right and moral thing to do. Says who? This is open hatred and disgust for white people simply existing in a cohesive, tight community.
All white people are fucking devils.
Quaint white neighborhoods is racism. Forcing non-whites into white areas is not about integration. It's about disintegration of white communities. There's nothing organic about it. It is contrived and calculated with very bad intentions. We're not talking about Thomas Sowell moving into your neighborhood. The EU is also doing something similar with their fake refugee quotas, forcing even the smallest European nations to take in their fair share. No non-European country has such an asinine, self-destructive policy. Most countries have a policy to not take in boatloads of strange foreigners. We're now dealing with mandatory racial integration and the attempted destruction of voluntary segregation. For now, there are some white pockets, but they're working on that. Well, if you support freedom and liberty and all that we keep hearing about that makes America so great, it includes the right to associate or disassociate with whomever you want or don't want. It means you don't have to like or include everyone. Yes, freedom means if you don't like a certain people, you don't have to bake them a cake or give them a job, live by them, or include them in any shape, way, or form. But now the country boasting about all its liberty and freedom says you can't exclude anyone. Well, unless they are straight and white. Usually those who find it most appalling that some choose to exclude a certain people are the most exclusionary themselves. Come on, Muslims, Jews, gays, blacks, SJWs, and all the other victim status classes are the most stuck up and elitist about who they let in, and they have orgs just for people like them, openly discriminating. And for me, I could care less about them. In fact, I prefer it when they stay set apart. But then they can't cry when people like I do too. It's not people like myself trying to force everyone to live together. No, I want the exact opposite. The freedom to disassociate, to not like someone or something, to break away from the liberal, multicultural cesspit, to discriminate and exclude. America is too big, too divided, way too diverse, and will never be whole again. There will never be one system that makes everyone happy. The only answer from here is separation, which is inevitable. But as white flight happens to places like Idaho, the government is right there importing refugees and building Section 8 because no town can be all white. It might lead to another Holocaust or something. Well, the same people who cry about exclusion or how there are too many whites are the same people who want their safe spaces and openly discriminate against people different from them, like me. They don't want freedom and diversity of thought or choice. They want their opinion to be enforced by law. Well, screw that. They are the same people who say it was wrong to have laws excluding others, but somehow they are in the moral right to have laws forcing people to accept others and forcing them to live with people they don't want to live with? No. Since no wall is being built, no mass deportations are happening, and legal immigration is still sky high, don't expect much from Trump when it comes to preserving the nation's European roots. Freedom of association and exclusion is the solution for this train wreck called liberal, diverse America. The freedom to say, no, I don't like you, without the Inquisition coming after you legally. The establishment is all cool with it until it's someone like me saying it. This won't last. Long ago, this country was united by ancestry, religion, and culture. That is long gone. The more diverse America gets, the further into the toilet it goes, and at this point, flush it down. It's long past due to admit that everyone is biased, and yes, everyone is a bigot, liberals, including you. Everyone hates and everyone loves, and everyone prefers people they have something in common with. It is human nature. The more the government tries to force people to accept others against their will, the worse the reaction will be. If we want to prevent an all-out civil war in America, the answer is to uphold freedom of association and the right of exclusion. Once we do, we'll see how this country will self-segregate geographically into communities that are more cohesive and unified. People would divide based on things like race, but also religion, politics, and sexuality. They already do. Humans are tribal. That will never change, and no free market or liberal values will ever replace that bond. As people divide geospatially, they'll be much happier being with people who they choose to be with without forced government integration, especially European Americans. There may never be a physical wall, but there are plenty of internal boundaries we've all built. A nation is a bond. It's not a flag and a piece of paper. No matter how hard they try, they will never destroy it. Thanks to Red Ice members, your support makes this possible. If you like what we do and you aren't a member yet, sign up at redicemembers.com. Want to know why I'm outside? We explained that in our latest video in the members section. See you next time.